Okay, so let's talk about Infinity Pool and all of the meanings that we can dissect from it. Of course, I probably won't get all of the meanings, but if you have any that I missed, definitely leave them down below. This is a conversation starter, but let's get right into it and some of the things I picked up. The more I thought about it, and after getting to check it out again, I do want to talk about it, so let's get into it. This isn't an Any Explained. If you want that, it will be in the other video I already did, the Any Explained. I will brush on the ending and talk a little bit about it, but if you want a full-on Any Explained, talk about everything that happens in the movie, that's another video that you can go check out on my channel right now. But let's get into it, and before we do, make sure you're subscribed and that notification bell turned on. Also, check out our Indiegogo slasher horror film we are still trying to fund in the description down below. But let's talk about Infinity Pool, one of the most interesting films I think we've seen in some time. Brandon Cronenberg delivers yet again after Possessor, and we are here to talk about what exactly all of it meant, because I think there's a multiple meanings here. I even think there's a little bit of Brandon Cronenberg writing about it himself, and we'll talk about that as well. So first and foremost, what we have to remember from Infinity Pool is where we see James at the beginning of the movie and where we see him at the end. I think at the beginning of the movie, we see James is somebody who is sort of like disillusioned with life, sort of not knowing where to go next. He hasn't ridden in a long time. He's sort of feeling like there is no light at the end of the tunnel for him anymore and his writing. So we see somebody who is struggling with all of that. And by the end of the movie, I don't think we see James in a better place than where we started. I actually think we see him in a worse place than where he started. And this was after thinking that this whole thing with Gabby and the zombies, as they call themselves, was going to lead maybe to a new sense of like passion and sort of inspiration. Instead, it has led him in the darker path than he was already on. And I think this is a way we can compare Gabby to being sort of like the devil. And one of the actors who we actually got to talk to on the press line even mentioned this, sort of comparing this tale to a Faustian type story. And I'll roll that clip right now so you can check it out.
Faustian terror. He is a literary person, like a professor, and he is hungry for something more in life, something more tactile, more visceral, and so he sells his soul to the devil, and then things start coming apart.
So yeah, like I said, there is definitely a Faustian type vibe here, where there is sort of this deal with the devil type of bargain of sorts that James does with Gabby at a point, and we see this sort of seducing by Gabby be done on that first trip when they're out there. And even then, when we see that scene where you know what I'm talking about, with the seed with James in the ground and Gabby, and yeah, we're not going to get much more into that because YouTube likes to play games, but I think that was sort of like James leaving a part of himself in that island, and that's where we see him go back at the end of the movie because of that. Not entirely because that happened, I'm saying, but I think like in a sort of like metaphor type of way. I also think that Gabby for sure is the ringleader of all of this, and the rest of the zombies are sort of like the demons of sorts that are trying to push James into this direction. And where James thinks he is sort of going to fit in with them, it was more that they were just using him for their own amusement. As Gabby says, they don't even care about his writing or about him. They just want to have a little fun with someone. And so James is sort of the butt of the joke at the end of the day. He thought he was laughing with them, but they were all laughing at him, and they were just using him as that. We also see it at the end when James is put up against his clone who wants to kill him as well, and James has to kill his own clone, almost like an ego death of sorts that James has after sort of feeling on top of the world right before this whole event happened, where he was trying to leave the country after he realized just how sick and twisted these people really are, where he thought that they wouldn't go to such extreme lengths, even though he was happily eager to do that in the beginning of their whole escapade. I think after a while he started to realize that this isn't really him, and these people are much more vile than he expected. But of course they weren't going to let him just go, not really break him down by the end of it, because they still hadn't gotten their amusement. They are people who are there to get their amusement, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get it, because they see themselves as sort of these like rich, powerful people that can do whatever they want. And I think that's another thing we can talk about with this movie as well, is this sort of like the powerful and elite people here on this island, foreigners for sure, are able to escape and do whatever they want to the land and to the people because they have the money to do so, as opposed to where somebody on this island might mess up or have themselves commit a crime and all of that, they are immediately killed. But we see that the rich and powerful always have this sort of like exit strategy. of sorts. And I don't really want to get much into that whole thing with the rich and the powerful, because I think that the movie sort of brushes up on that, but I don't think it really goes deep into that whole thing. So I don't really want to put that sort of context into the movie. I think it's more definitely a movie about oneself and sort of how you see yourself and your work that you do, and sort of these things that sort of put doubt into you. That's why I said it was kind of feeling like it was a Cronenberg writing about himself too as an artist, and sort of like the amount of pressure that you have on yourself to sort of put out the next piece of work after you put out something. And then you have all of these outer sources, like Gabby, the zombies or whatever, that can sort of be put as the critics, the audience, the peers that you have. And I think it's just this insane pressure to put out something as good that you have on yourself. But also at the same time, James is someone who didn't really see himself having that much pressure to do anything, especially since he had married M. He had already come into some money and all of that, so he felt kind of like eased into this world, and he was okay with that. I think another big part about this movie and its marketing, of course, is the mask. And I think that the mask really represent like the culture itself. And I think when the zombies, Gabby and James, wear these masks to do all the vile things that they do, it sort of is them mocking the culture in a way. We hear them also talk down about the people in this area and how they live and how they are. And I think that's sort of a good metaphor as to how sort of like third world countries and all of these places are viewed upon from the West, or more elite countries. And they sort of are sometimes used for their own amusement, where they go out and exploit all of these people because they're really looking for a way to survive, and it's through these tourists. And a lot of the times we see it in real world that a lot of these countries are very much so degraded and treated unfairly, but they don't really say much because they don't want that tourism to sort of go away, because they need that for their own economy and country. And so I think that here we see it at a much more extreme version of that, where we see these group of like elite sort of take advantage of this country's like loophole system in their law in order to commit all of these terrible acts that they would never do where they come from. Because of course we see in the end, after James kills his own double, that they go back to their normal lives as they're heading to the airport. They like change demeanor and everything, the way they talk. They're like these very professional type people, and there's like nothing that compares to what they were a couple of days prior. And that's what James really sees here, is that he can't do this. He himself cannot go back to just living a normal life after all of the acts that just occurred and everything that he has done. That's why he in fact stays on the island, because he sort of feels that he belongs here. He's attached to this island now. I mean, especially after going about and seeing 3 of his clones die, one of them by his own hands. I think he has sort of like killed himself internally, and his person that he is, he doesn't know who he is anymore, and he can't return back to a normal life just as the others did. And I think that sort of is more about the person that James truly is deep down than the person that he was trying to portray being to Gabby at some point in the movie. I think he wasn't able to keep that mask up, and all the masks are now officially gone from James, and he is his true self now, vulnerable and just going to stay on this island because he feels like this is where he belongs. Whether that's because of punishment or just not knowing what to do after returning, after experiencing all of this, it is still something that James feels he has to do, in my opinion. Another thing is also Gabby breastfeeding James. I think that was one of the most bizarre scenes I've seen in cinema, and a lot of people were talking about that, but I really do think that is sort of Gabby making sure that James is fully in the group now. I think that them seeing that James has done this to his double is sort of like his hazing, his final hazing in order to join the group. And we hear it at the end when they say that they'll see him next year, whatever. And I guess that just symbolizes James sort of being reborn again, and sort of like a baby have to take from the mother's breast, who, of course, as I said, Gabby is the ringleader. You can call her the mother of the group of sorts, and that is the reason that she breastfeeds James in this bizarre ritual that they have. But I think that James realizes that this is not the life he wants to have, and he's just like lost in the world now. He is a broken man by the end of it. He is just there on the beach and the rain just dropping down, and he is not saying a word, because I think that James is gone, completely gone now. Just my thoughts. I know it was more like me just spilling out than a more like structured video of sorts, and I did want to make a more structured video, and maybe we'll talk more about this movie, because I do want to talk more about it, but that's just my thoughts on some of the things that came to my mind. If there's more things that you want to talk about, leave them below in the comments. We'll probably do another video. Maybe we'll do a live as well. Usually with movies like this, I like to do lives. Like we did one for Nope last year, and that was very fun. A lot of people came in and people are just giving their theories and thoughts on it, and we talked a little bit more and we were able to comprehend it more together. That's what I'm here to do, a conversation. I'm not here to lecture you at all. I'm here to have a conversation. So if you have any thoughts and opinions on the movie, leave them down below. Any meanings I might have missed as well. We do want to talk about, was that the real James or not? Was there a double that kind of got away and sort of switched places with the real James? That's a good question, and I will talk about that in another video. But let me know your thoughts and opinions on the infinity pool ending, the whole meaning of the movie and all of that. What is your interpretation? Like I said, there's multiple ones, and yeah, we'll talk about it here as long as you want. So make sure you are subscribed, notification bell on, so you know when we do the live. Also, if you haven't, go check out our Indiegogo. We are still trying to fund our slasher horror film, and as always, that's going to do it for us. We are on the road to 30,000 subscribers, less than 4,000 to go, so super excited to get to that. But as always, I'll see you next time. Stay safe, stay positive.